The 3-minute meeting turning Washington upside down tonight. President Trump says there will be no negotiating until Democrats stop the 20-some investigations they're waging into his presidency, his finances, the 2016 election, and more. Well, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi under fire to manage her members as a growing number demand she launch impeachment proceedings. Will she do it? Does the president want her to? Tonight, we will talk to Mark Levin, Senator Tom Cotton, and more. Plus, there is breaking news as yet another federal judge gives House Democrats a legal win. Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. We have Fox News team coverage tonight. David Spunt has more on the president's decision to draw a line in the sand. But first, correspondent Kristen Fisher with details on that very abrupt meeting this morning. It's gotten a lot of attention for being so short, Kristen.
A ton of attention. And just when you thought that you couldn't be surprised by anything in Washington, this happens. Speaker Pelosi again accusing President Trump of having a temper tantrum in the West Wing. President Trump pushing back just 30 minutes ago by saying on Twitter, "This is not true. I was purposely very polite and calm, much as I was minutes later with the press in the Rose Garden. Can be easily proven. It is all such a lie." Well, this all started this morning when Speaker Pelosi walked out of a private meeting with House Democrats about impeachment and told reporters that President Trump was engaged in a cover-up. Not exactly a sweetener when you're set to meet the president in about an hour to try to hash out an infrastructure deal. When President Trump walked in, he never sat down, never shook hands. He spoke for about 3 minutes, and when the speaker tried to respond, the president just turned around and walked out.
I walk in to look at people that had just said that I was doing a cover-up. I don't do cover-ups. I told Senator Schumer, Speaker Pelosi, I want to do infrastructure. I want to do it more than you want to do it. I'd be really good at that. That's what I do. But you know what? You can't do it under these circumstances.
It was the second time President Trump has walked out on Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. They say he did it because he doesn't really want an infrastructure deal. As for that hastily arranged press conference in the Rose Garden right after the meeting fell apart, Democrats say it was planned all along, and they point to signs on the president's podium as proof.
To watch what happened in the White House would make your jaw drop. It's clear that this was not a spontaneous move on the president's part. It was planned. When we got in the room, the curtains were closed. The president, there was a place for him at the front so he could stand and attempt to tell us why he wouldn't do infrastructure. And, of course, then he went to the Rose Garden with prepared signs that had been printed up long before our meeting.
So President Trump has now declared that he cannot work with Democrats on infrastructure or anything else until they stop investigating him. But now tonight, Democrats are one step closer to potentially getting even more ammunition against him. A federal judge in Manhattan just ruled that Deutsche Bank, the president's longtime lender, and Capital One can turn over financial documents in response to subpoenas from House Democrats. Speaker Pelosi said she was very excited by the decision. So bottom line, the president's personal and business finances, which he has long tried to keep a secret, are now much closer to becoming public. Shannon.
All right. We're going to talk about that with our legal panel coming up. Kristen, thank you very much. Okay, a few blocks down Pennsylvania Avenue on Capitol Hill. Very different narrative. Correspondent David Spunt has that part of the story. Hey, David.
Hey, Shannon, good evening. Yes, it does continue on Capitol Hill. Members of Congress and Hill staffers still trying to figure out exactly what happened today. Things went off the rails and quickly. The president sent a letter to Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer last night telling them that he looked forward to the infrastructure conversation today. On the way to the White House, the speaker spontaneously stopped the cameras. She said this, listen.
We believe that no one is above the law, including the President of the United States, and we believe that the President of the United States is engaged in a cover-up,
That did not go over well. Both Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer arrived at the White House not long after. And as Kristen said, you know what happened inside? A tense meeting that lasted just a few minutes. Pelosi and Schumer got back in their SUV, went back to Capitol Hill. Here is what they said upon their return to the Capitol.
I pray for the President of the United States, and I pray for the United States of America.
We came here very seriously. The president asked in his letter last night, where would Democrats spend the money on infrastructure? I was prepared to give him a 35-page plan detailing this.
And a few hours later, Speaker Pelosi spoke to the Center for American Progress about the White House blow-up.
It was very, very, very strange. But the press says to me, "Were you surprised?" And I said, I say to you, surprised? Nobody could ever be surprised at anything that happens here.
And Speaker Pelosi under considerable pressure as few dozen members of her party have come out in favor of impeachment. They bring it up just about every day.
Well, you guys know that I'm for impeachment. I've always been for impeachment. I've never backed up. I've never changed my mind. I think he should be impeached.
And Pelosi has tried to stay away from the impeachment word since she took over the House in January. But today she took a step in a different direction.
In plain sight, in the public domain, this president is obstructing justice and he's engaged in a cover-up. And that could be an impeachable offense.
Many Democrats are in for an impeachment inquiry. They're in favor of that, which is different than an actual impeachment proceeding, while others want to stay away from the word altogether. Shannon.
All right, David Spunt, thank you very much. Our political panel will tackle that. All right, House Democrats celebrating tonight as a second federal judge gives them a win on their efforts to dig into not only the president's finances, but also those of his children, grandchildren, and in-laws as well. Let's talk about it with our legal eagles tonight. Former Deputy Assistant Attorneys General Harry Litman and Tom Dupree. Thank you guys both for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks, Shannon.
Okay, so let's talk about this ruling. Robert Barnes, an attorney who's been on with us as well, says this in a tweet. Another Obama appointee rubber stamps one of the most invasive congressional subpoenas in American history. Privacy from spying politicians' eyes is dead if this remains the law. He quotes then Watkins v. U.S. There's no general authority to expose the private affairs of individuals. Harry, does this go all the way to the Supreme Court? And should people, regardless of either side of the aisle that they're on, be worried about the potential release of any president's personal finances?
Not this one, Shannon. There are other issues that may, but this is just a standard subpoena of the sort that Congress and prosecutors would do any and every day for any investigation. The argument on the other side, and it's the same one, by the way, significantly, that Secretary Mnuchin is saying in taxes, there is no valid legislative purpose. And what both judges have said now is the same thing they said in favor of Trump on the immigration order. We don't second guess here. Of course, there could be a valid legislative purpose. There are possible financial conflicts of interest. This is a very straightforward, daily pedestrian kind of subpoena, and I don't expect it to be overturned on appeal.
Okay, Tom, both of you have served within the DOJ. I want to read something from Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu, obviously not a fan of the president. He says this in a tweet. Dear at the Justice Department Bill Barr, this Judge Ramos ruling is the second court loss you had this week. Shows your legal arguments suck. You want the imperial presidency, but your actions will result in a weakening of the office of the president. Cut your losses and stop the cover-ups. Tom, your response.
Shannon, I have too many thoughts to fit in a 20-second answer, but I guess my first response is, look, I mean, the fact that you lose 2 court cases doesn't say a whole lot to me. I mean, there is a lot of litigation going on in a lot of different countries, a lot of different courtrooms, a lot of different forums, a lot of different issues. So the fact that they've lost 2 isn't a big deal, particularly since we know both of these decisions will ultimately get appealed to the Court of Appeals. I think that the administration has set a legal strategy of doing everything they can to fight these congressional efforts or efforts by investigators to get at the president's documents, to dig into his finances. I suspect they will meet with success in some other courts, so the fact that they've had 2 losses out of the gate doesn't say a whole lot to me.
Okay, Charlie Kirk, conservative commentator, often seen on our air as well, tweets this. The irony of Nancy Pelosi accusing Donald Trump of, quote, the biggest cover-up in U.S. history, all while President Trump is working to expose what really is the biggest cover-up in history, is truly incredible. Democrats know they're in trouble. Okay, the meeting blew up this morning after she accused him of covering up crimes. Harry, are Democrats feeling the heat or not?
I don't know. I mean, it seems to me she was sort of goading him, and it worked. I see the irony going both ways here, Shannon. This is the president who has accused the FBI leadership within the last week of treason, a capital offense. So, you know, he I think, has a much thinner skin than when he's actually dishing it out. But what she's saying is he won't let anyone testify. That's his legal right to try to do, but it hasn't happened in other scandals. So, I think now it's a sort of political war of words.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, we know the legal and the political both continue, and they're two very different fronts. Some of it is, in a courtroom. Some of it is the optics and the PR battle that happens. But the president would say he has let people testify for a lot of hours and a lot of people and a lot of documents. But Democrats say not enough.
Yeah, and I think the president has a fair point. We all know the resources that went into the Mueller investigation. We know that the president allowed his officials, including Don McGahn, to meet with Mueller for extended periods of time. And so I think from the president's perspective, it's like, what more is there? Why are the Democrats so insistent on plowing the same ground, thinking that they, the members of the House Judiciary Committee and their staffers, could uncover evidence that Bob Mueller failed to? It seems very unlikely. We all know Mueller had a real dream team, very experienced investigators. If they didn't find it, I'm not quite sure why the members of the House Judiciary Committee think that they'll track it down.
Well, as those investigations continue, we know of at least 3 investigations into the investigators that we're waiting on as well. Much to chew on, so please come back, gentlemen. Harry and Tom, great to have you both.
Shannon.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.